Hey, this is me. So I was at the IDW meetup yesterday in West Los Angeles with our fearless leader, brother, and the rest of the crew. And it was a good one. And we were talking about the origins of the culture war. And my epistemological warrior. I'm a tactical epistemologist, which means I check your words and parse them very closely to see if you say what you mean and you actually mean what you say, and you actually know the implications of the ways that what you say actually means. Anyway, it just occurred to me that his framework for saying everything was good. It was challenged, but I accept it. And he was saying the origins of the culture war have to do with looking at the transition between three worlds: the pre-modern, the modern, and the postmodern. I'm going to focus between the modern and the postmodern because that's where we are right now. And it's interesting that me, as a Stoic, I'm trying to bring the pre-modern understanding into a modern understanding, which is where I'd rather stay, even though my work is postmodern. But we'll get into that. What I'm saying is the postmodern world, if you want to understand postmodernism very well and very simply, understand this thing that is very common. Somebody says, let's do this. And the other person will say, let's not, and say we did. Everybody's heard that. Everybody's heard that. And what does that mean? It means you would rather be than do, because being means you can sell your story, all right? So you want to be respected for what you say, but not for what you do. So that is the difference between the postmodern and the modern, because the modern, you use what you know to change what you can do. And in the pre-modern, you just know what you did, and it's all doing. But the problem with the advantage of the postmodern is very much like, it's like fractional reserve banking. With fractional reserve banking, you can create a great deal of capital and be leveraged and fund things that are more than reality can you can monetize everybody's fantasy, because it doesn't have to be actually real money. It could be a loan that's extended into the future. And if you succeed, great. If you don't, all you have to do is get back to your fractional reserve and you're still good. You're still a good lender. So you only have to have a 10% grasp on reality, but you can lend the other 90%. And that's what people who are trying to manipulate narratives are doing. They're saying you can live in this narrative space and it doesn't actually have to come into reality as long as people can believe it. And that's why people say you can be an intersectional, left-handed, vegan, transgenderal, polymorph, and it's okay. Even if you're just like 0.04% of reality, of the actual people, you can have as much dignity and respect as anybody else. Because in this narrative space, we know how to monetize that, and you can become, a celebrity. Like a particular homosexual Native American that I remember from my days at Slate or Salon. Anyway, the bottom line is, so what do the postmodern people fear? What they fear more than anything is actual reality impinging on their postmodern reality, okay? So it's like you could be Lindsay Lohan, and you're famous, and you're beautiful, and you're sexy, and everybody believes all these things about you, no matter what you do, because you just have to have that much of reality, and you do well there, then you can expand it and become rich and famous and powerful. But as soon as you run your car into a pole and your baby flies out of the back seat and goes through the windshield, the laws of physics have just destroyed your world, okay? And no matter who you say, well, don't you know who I am? No, you're not that anymore, because you have run afoul of the world of physics, and those laws don't care about you. The universe is indifferent to motive, all right? And so what do the postmodern people fear the most? That keeps their narrative into the realm of belief. Global warming. Global warming is the thing that the postmodernists fear the most, because it means the planet is going to impinge its reality on everything else. And so they get behind the science. They say, this is how we have to live in the future. Because that is the only kind of reality that they think they have to deal with. And remind me to get back to Steven Pinker, because the reality of war is something Steven Pinker doesn't want to deal with. And the reality of male aggression is something a lot of people don't want to deal with, especially if it's natural, especially if it obeys the laws of nature. They're saying, no, we don't have to pay attention to the laws of nature. We just have to have 10% fractional reserve banking in nature, and then we can have this 90% and fund everybody. And everybody's culture can be good, and everybody's religion can be good, and we can be open and relative, and everybody's happy. But when reality, the laws of nature and physics impinge on that, then their whole postmodern economy goes down the tubes. And that's what they fear right now. So they want to get a perception in the minds of everybody so that they will do the things that the climate change people want them to do. In other words, they can control maybe this much reality. If they control the energy sector and get everybody to believe in nuclear energy or solar energy or renewable energies, whatever the energy is, then they can overcome the reality of fossil fuels and the efficiency of fossil fuels and the energy density of fossil fuels and the things that makes fossil fuels good from a physical laws of physics world. Okay? They don't want to have to deal with that. They just want to get people to reject that world and then say they accept the new narrative, and then they have that control. So they don't actually do the science. They talk about the science, and they get virtue and power and monetization because they can talk. And it's not about doing the science, it's about being a person who believes in the science. And so that is the big friction in the world. And it goes beyond the cultural wars of America. It's really about, can we have a postmodern society? And what is the postmodern society? The postmodern society is the matrix, all right? And it's not all Marxist, but it's sort of Marxist, because if you say, here we can create these material conditions if people believe these things. So if they give up their own internal individuality and say they belong to a class of the oppressed or the class of whatever, then that class can unite, we can usurp all the power, and we can give what they want, okay? And that has to deal with the religion of belief, or the reality of the belief in religion, that's a reality that they can't just change. That's a narrative that is too deeply embedded in a lot of people, and maybe embedded in human psychology. But the bottom line is, there's something that, as long as they can create the matrix, all right? And let's say this part is reality, all right? You have the energy, and you have the bandwidth, and you have the compute power that relies on physics, but then you can create Skyrim, and you can create Elder Scrolls Online, and you can create, Fortnite, and you can create all this stuff. I tell you, Disney is a postmodern company, because Stan Lee, who created Marvel, just out of his head says, okay, let's speculate about what happens if multiple nuclear bombs come down. Multiple nuclear bombs haven't come down. There's been, the tests, but not on people. So there's no way that there's going to be a radioactive spider that bites Peter Parker and gives him these supernatural powers. But the idea is brilliant. Spider-Man is a huge idea. It's a multi-billion-dollar global idea, but it's all postmodern. It's all fictional. It all exists outside the realm of the rules of the laws of the universe. It's a thing that lives in people's minds, but it's being. It's not doing. You can't do anything Peter Parker does. You may imagine yourself doing that. You may imagine being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and saving, old ladies who cross the street. And you can imagine the virtue of, to whom great powers requires great responsibility. Yeah, but you don't have great powers. You just have the power of the narrative that you borrowed from Stan Lee, and that makes you something. That makes you be something, but it doesn't make you do anything. You're just a reader. You're just a consumer. But there is a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar global world of Spider-Man. And if you believe in Spider-Man, and you cosplay Spider-Man, and you teach Spider-Man to your kids, or Baby Shark, or whatever you teach, that is something that has to have just the small part of reality to bank this postmodern reality. Okay? And so these guys are always vulnerable. And right now people are saying billionaires. Billionaires are always vulnerable. They're not. Because billionaires are masters of reality, most of them. There's Wall Street billionaires who just play with money, and their worlds can collapse. All right? But that's based on your speculation of something that doesn't real. It's like until you sell your investments, your profits are imaginary. Okay? But we don't want to get into that. Bottom line, the difference is between the rule of the modern, which is where mind directs action and you do things. All right? You think about, what does it take to build a skyscraper? How do I get concrete? How do I get steel? And I do those things. I move that concrete, I move those steel, and I'm cursing and I'm sweating and I'm aggressive because I have to move things. All right? But now in college, it's all postmodern. You can talk about blah, blah studies and not have a job, but you master the narrative. Okay? So that is value in a postmodern sense. But who's your Leviathan? What makes that real? Just because somebody's talking about it, jawboning that? All right? So what I'm doing, by the way, is I'm an evolving Stoic, which means I'm looking at the world of the pre-modern world to see how human beings thought, because we haven't evolved. Evolution is going way too slow for me to be that different from Marcus Aurelius or Diogenes. So if I understand how those people thought before they learned how to monetize like Stan Lee and build a world of Spider-Man, then I will be immune to the collapse of the world of Spider-Man. And I'll be able to live well as the ancient Greeks or the ancient Romans or the ancient Sumerians or the ancient Persians lived, all right, in a pre-modern society that depended more actually on the earth. So here's the big prescription, and I'll leave it at that. If you're a vegan, or if you decide to take on the characteristics of identifying with blah, 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 because you don't like the industrial process that provides the things that you consume, you're on the right track. But only if you learn how to cook that way, and only if you know how to grow those vegetables, all right? But your conversation about being a vegan, nobody cares about that. That's just signaling that you are on the postmodern side. You are trying to be rather than do, all right? Do is eating your vegetables. It's just that simple. Just eat your goddamn vegetables. But being means you have to be an advocate for veganism, and you have to produce a multi-million-dollar television series or a movie or gather celebrities to talk about, and then you're just educating people who are not grounded in reality, because you have to do that. The narrative has to continue when reality doesn't reinforce what you need to know. And human beings are very interesting animals. We understand reality intuitively. I know if I hear a loud, deep noise over here, I'm going to look. I'm going to startle. I didn't have to read that in a book. I didn't have to understand the matter. I didn't have to understand the rule book. There was not any particular literacy that is attendant to me startling at a large, scary noise. All right? My body instantly knows how to do that. And that is the difference, because you need to be more and more educated to appreciate the larger and larger virtual world that we're trying to accommodate everyone in based on this little investment in reality. So I hope that explains how I see the origin of the culture wars from a philosophical standpoint. And you can kind of identify the big difference between modern and postmodern from doing versus being. So that's it. Talk to you later.